we're going to be discussing the future potential of AI. Yes, there is a lot of hype. I mean, 7 years back, AI was going to take away 50% of the jobs in Hyderabad. If anything, 50% of the jobs have added in the same period. And a few years back, it was the metaverse. Some companies changed their names based on that wave. And right now, it's the Gen AI wave. I think the wave will, for sure, subside, the hype. But there is substance. We're going to be discussing the substance, right? The hype will subside in the next 6 to 12 months. So to get the deliberation started, Ajit sir has a more wholesome view. He's been kind of in the management consulting space for a long time, has a very good sense of industry, business school, after that ISB, and now in his role at Rich, understands on the research side very, very well. Sir, we would like to first hear an extended opening comment from you, just sharing your broader view of the whole space before we drill down into the specifics with MSR, Surya, and Jay.
Yeah, thank you, Ramesh. And you know, this is such a vast space that I don't think I can even cover all of it. So what I'm going to do is to focus on just two areas. And two areas which I think are very important, not just for us as a country, but for the world. Because with climate change happening, the two big areas that worry me a lot are food and health. So let me just concentrate on those two areas. One is life sciences and one is agriculture. So if I then take life sciences and break it down again into three components. If we look at drug discovery over the last 20, 30 years has become more and more expensive. People are talking of figures like 3 billion to 5 billion for each drug discovery. And it takes 5 to 10 years. Now with AI, we are beginning to see some amazing changes already, right? So earlier what used to happen is that we used to look at, first decide theoretically that this is the composition of this disease or this bacteria or virus, and this is what we know about some chemicals or products, and therefore what is likely to happen. Now what is happening with AI is we don't worry about all of this, we just throw the whole thing at it, and they tell us what neural pathways are more likely to work. Already AMR, we think we have a solution which has been suggested by AI, and that is going to be a phenomenal, because drug resistance of bacteria, etc., antimicrobial resistance is a huge big problem. And with viruses, etc., coming, the discovery of new viruses is also going to be affected by it. So that's one big one. The second thing is an area of diagnostics. And already in diagnostic, we are beginning to see here in Hyderabad so many great startups. But going forward, I think early detection of things, life-threatening things like cancer, glaucoma, tuberculosis, etc., is all happening predominantly because of AI. And that's again going to, the earlier we can stop them, or earlier we detect them, the faster we can stop them. The third thing, and I think it's going to be the most phenomenal thing, is surgery. Surgery, robotic surgery with AI-driven robots is going to make surgeons unnecessary in at least most of the simple thing in the very near future. So we are worried about our jobs. I think poor surgeon who works for 20 years to become an expert may start becoming redundant soon. By the way, there are some more things also. You know, in diagnostics, what happens is most experts look at, this is the most of it, this is what it is. But what AI is now saying is, but by the way, you also look at some completely different things which are outside the Six Sigma limits, right? So it's helping better diagnostics. So in life sciences, there is an enormous potential that is happening. Obviously, there are some challenges, right? Data privacy is one big challenge. There are ethical issues of who can get it, etc. And there are data issues itself. I mean, you know, we have been working in IIIT with trying to get data. There are three people involved in this. One is the hospital, which has the data. Second is the data company. But the real owner of the data is the patient. And that poor patient has been ignored by everyone. So how do we incorporate data privacy, etc., will start becoming extremely important. A more practical challenge that we face is that data scientists and startups and hospitals and individual clinicians have completely different perspectives about their own contribution. So even if I have the data, my expectation of what that data should cost to you, the startup, is different from your expectation. We recently had a startup coming from the US. We have a hospital here in Hyderabad which is all digital data, and that solution would have helped us to avoid fetal deaths. And the only reason it's not going ahead is because they can't agree on what is the cost. So there are some practical, simple costs. Same thing in agriculture, and I'll make this very brief. Already, when we all read about crop, flooding, or, crop burning out, or floods, etc. But how do we know what is the extent of loss? Today, using AI, we can tell you exactly that in this field, rice was being grown, it had grown up 80% and now it's 30% destroyed. So crop insurance is now becoming a truly fast, quick and genuine, so they're pragmatic. Pest control, product grading, field mapping, even lending to farmers is becoming very good because of AI, etc. So in agriculture, but again, ultimately it's all going to be driven by data. And the one huge problem in agriculture is each state has different data definitions. When I was young, and I don't know, there's probably nobody of my age and era there, but there used to be an old movie called Do Bigha Zameen. I realized that Bigha is different in Bihar, is different in UP, is different in Gujarat, is different in Rajasthan. So Do Bigha Zameen means different things to different people. And all records are different. So how do we standardize data? Does anybody know how many varieties of rice or mango we have? So rice is not rice. There are some 140 odd varieties. So how do we do this data standardization that will help us to use the full potential of AI is actually the real problem, which I think all of us here together should be working together to solve. Because I think a lot of that, how do we create digital public goods in agriculture and health is going to really decide whether we meet the future potential of AI. So let me stop there.
No, absolutely, sir. I think data is like we're in the middle of it, IEEE and all academic institutions. And even as a social initiative, it's hard to compile data, collect data, and commercially it's even harder. Like you said, those with data are not willing to part with it. I think it needs some radical change. Like with that broader context, so we have Surya, who's Dean of Research and Innovation. We have Jay, who joined Tripedi recently to run the very large applied AI initiative, iHub Data, which is creating kind of solutions from research, translation of research. And then, of course, MSR needs no introduction. MSR runs T-Hub. So in that order, I want to just get your opening comments. So first, Surya, if you could, Ajit sir touched upon the broader issues, opportunities, of course, a lot of opportunities, and the issues and challenges. But specifically, is research ready for kind of solutions? If you can just touch upon that, and I know IIT is doing a lot in terms of getting research ready. You can touch upon it a little bit, specifically from IIT standpoint, broader academic view also. Is research ready for solutioning?
Sure. Okay. There is a interesting anecdote I will start. So I think you know the Honorable PM's call, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan, and he added Jai Anusandhan. Okay. That's nice. Okay. But then there was an interesting post note to it. What is the translation of Anusandhan in English? Is it research or is it innovation? And this question actually was like, and is there a difference between innovation and research? So I think, so we also set thinking, I will not go into the dictionary word of it. Frankly, I'm very bad at linguistics. But what we notice is when people are using the word innovation, it's not purely something new, something unique, but also like trying to create an impact. Okay, and I think so the whole ecosystem you see both from government, from academia, we are no longer talking research per se, we are talking innovation. And what we mean by that is the emphasis is no longer just on finding something new, but finding a relevance and an impact on the bigger society, maybe economical, maybe social, maybe different manners, but it should have an impact. And I think that has been the focus in most academia. Two instances I will give, for example, where so one is of course, I mean, our bread and butter degree courses. Okay, so there I think, for example, IIT Hyderabad has been the first one in the India to start a AI BTech. Okay, so definitely on creating the necessary manpower, we are on the job, and there is good amount of traction and good amount of interest there. But on the other part of technology transfer, technology translation also, so most of us have a technology transfer office, technology commercialization, where this research which is happening can be converted and can be taken into the, and I think there is good amount of recognition that is important and has to be done. So,
I think you're right. In recent years, of course, IIT Hyderabad is a new age institution, so it's more connected. IIT Hyderabad, for all kinds of existential reasons, always was very pro-industry because faculty are open to industry projects because it's a funding source for the research work. And but if you look at Professor Junjunwala's reference to his first project, those days it was unheard of in the early 80s, right, working with industry. I think it has changed. Of course, the older legacy institutions, probably they still have mindset, but newer institutions definitely have a more open mindset in the newer institutions.
I will divide that into two parts.
IIT, certainly IIT Bombay, IIT Madras, IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi. I don't know much about Kharagpur. They are extremely active in the transform, in the, not just in pure research, but in taking that research to market. So I think the IITs have done a great job and across the board, I think.
I would divide that answer into two parts. What IITs are doing today compared to what IITs were doing 20 years back or 50 years back, it's an exponential growth. But part two, what IITs have the potential to do and what IITs are doing, I think there is a lot more potential, and we hope and we ourselves are not satisfied. हमें ज़्यादा चाहिए.
True. I mean, that's the opportunity. We need to have that view, so we keep getting better. Now, so Jay, you come from industry, you move to academics, and you're running this center that's trying to create solutions. How is the connections happening? See, it's one thing, like Surya said, the mindset of faculty is changing, so they're more open to looking at problems that have a kind of an application possibility, which is a starting point for any kind of translation, so which is good. But when you look at creating solutions, translational research and such, how is that connection happening? How do you connect research with possibilities, actual possibilities, not a hypothetical one?
Yeah, in order for us to explore the real possibilities, we have to first understand, what those possibilities are, right? So we can't start by just saying, okay, we have done this research, now how do we apply it? We have to first go out, maybe like if I look at healthcare, we have to probably go and talk to multiple hospitals, multiple healthcare centers, primary health centers, and see where the need is. Where is it that we can make an impact with our research, with our innovation? Once we understand that landscape, then we are going to come back and we're actually kind of invoking in the journey. I have also personally started already talking to a few places since I just joined last month in this role, that, where can we really contribute? What is the help that you need? So understand that is to me the first step of making that impact. And similarly, we also want to take up, like right now in iHub data, we are focused on a couple of key domains, right? One is mobility, one is healthcare. But I'm sure in the future, we're going to look at some of the other aspects also. Like personally for me, if I look at the progress of the country, the two domains which I primarily focus a lot are healthcare and education, right? So your country cannot progress unless you really make an impact in these two places. So I'm sure in the future, we're going to make those connections. But the approach would be to go out, seek, and understand what the need is out there, then take the research forward in that direction.
I think yesterday I was at the Ministry of Heavy Industries. So they the team that we're meeting, which is running the Samarth Industry 4.0 innovation program. So they were giving examples like say of textile industry. They said the machines, the innovation is so less in that industry, especially not the very large ones. If you go to the next rung, the Tirupurs and the Surats, and they say even something as simple as the thread snapping and getting entwined in the machine doesn't have a solution today. So I think you're right. Discovering these problems is very important so that we can solve the right problems. I think discovery is the biggest problem that we have. I think all these iHubs being set up by DST and some of the other ministries is a great BIRAC runs a phenomenal program, DBT. I think they've got it right. And now I think the DST's structure with iHub focus on translation is good. Of course, they're struggling to get the institutions to change the mindset. So going by the reviews that's happening in those, I don't think they share what you just described among the older IITs is still probably in the outer fringes of it. The core, there's still a mindset change that they are struggling with in the IITs, but it's a good start.
So I think, there is a difference, and take the younger faculty are a lot more attuned. Whereas the older faculty, and all fairness, they came into that scheme to just do research. As Surya says, they wanted to discover new things. They had no interest in whether it... But the younger ones, having said that, I think the institutions also have to change their promotion policies. You cannot say that you will only get promotion if you publish in top tier publications. You have to have a different tag. And consulting companies went through that. When technology, this thing come from strategy consulting to technology, we made the change. So they have to make that change. The other thing that academic institutions broadly don't get fully is the speed that the industry wants. And you see, an academic thinks as a Puritan, whereas the industry wants an 80% solution. And that lack of agreement sometimes creates chaos.
No, I think you nailed it, sir. Jay, I know you want to add something, but I'll just make this one observation. So I work with faculty at IIIT a lot when connecting with industry projects. When I've noticed most faculty, when they do research, any amount of uncertainty, they're comfortable with the uncertainty. It's a bounded problem for them. They know, and they will take, even if they have reasonably certain only, not sure, they will go with it. When it comes to industry project, they want to be 150% sure. I tell them, look, if they want an engineering solution, they won't come to us. They've come to an academic institution because there's something open-ended, so they're okay with uncertainty. But you're right, they hold it to a much higher expectation. But the younger faculty are surely much more willing to consider. Jay, you want to add something before we go to MSR?
I just wanted to add, because you talked about my industry experience, right? So when I was in Microsoft, for every product, there used to be a product manager. The product manager used to define the roadmap, the need, what needs to be built. It was not the technical people, it was not the engineers who used to decide what the product will do. They used to decide how it will be built. So similarly, as we do research, I think there is a need for somebody like that who should decide, what that translational research should be, so that, the appropriate effort and everything is spent behind that. Yes, journal publications are important to faculty, I get that, but as Ajit sir said, it has to be more than that. And the incentives or the promotion criteria, etc., have to kind of encourage that kind of behavior and mindset across the faculty to do that.
No, absolutely, I think that's the Israeli model.
Right.
The Israeli model, as they talk to the technology transfer office at the start of the research. Right. They get the input from the TTO office saying look, if you do this, this is the problem you can solve.
Right.
And they factor that in as they define the research problems.
Right.
Most organizations, academic institutions, the TTO comes after the fact.
Right.
But Israeli model is the one you're referring to. We need to do more of it. So MSR, you're in the receiving end of this pipeline, right? There's research happening, and then research kind of translates into some kind of possible technologies that could be commercialized, and then actually it comes. Are you seeing enough when you see the startups that come, right? When you meet a startup, they've already kind of started on some journey, right? Even if they're pre-revenue. Are you seeing enough startups coming with deeper kind of IP knowledge, whether research or technology content? Are you seeing enough of them? What percentage would you think are those, and what's the quality of those, the thinking that goes into the startups?
Sure. So I think obviously two things are happening. Obviously, I don't think there's anyone doing any foundational models in India, okay? Because contrary to what I think Sam Altman, somebody asked him a question, right? Saying, can you build something with 10 million? And I just read that he's now planning to raise about 7 trillion, which is twice India's GDP, for building up chipsets to power the next gen. So I don't think there's anyone doing foundational models, right? But what we are definitely seeing is a lot of different startups working on different verticals. So obviously there's a bunch of people in healthcare. I think Professor Ajit spoke about some of them. So obviously there are people doing work around pathology in cancer. There are people doing work, for example, on accelerating biopharma, R&D, drug discovery, where you have to deal with large data sets. there's a bunch of people working on less, let's say, more mundane things. For example, around fintech. How do you build models, large-scale models, and use ML particularly to create more efficient lending sort of thing, right? So we have startups in logistics, we have startups in fintech, we have startups in healthcare. We are starting to see some interesting startups in edtech and so on. But in terms of, if you were to look at depth of ideas, I think the one challenge all of them are struggling with is not one, many, but I think one is funding, right? Because most of these are fairly early stage, and there are, except a few, which we all know Sarvam.ai and people like that who've raised large sums of money, primarily driven by the pedigree of the founders or not necessarily the problem they're seeking to solve. So funding, I think, is a challenge. That's something which hopefully in the next budget there was some commitment on setting up an innovation fund. So hopefully some of that will trickle down. So I think the ideas are good, but again, do you think personally would they become world beaters? I'm a little skeptical.
So, up close, I'm very involved with IIT. IIT, of course, I know very well. IIT, I'm involved with IIT Delhi and few other institutions. So I see it relatively up close. The biggest challenge is first off, not too many venture taking a research idea forward, either the research team or somebody else from outside also. Not too many venture. When they venture, they often come from much stronger technology or science background and not that connected to markets. Just their background is such, if they're picking up such problems. The funding, of course, the risk money is low in India. There's not enough risk money. But that said, the market connect of the ideas also is very weak. So that's why they get their 20, 30, 40, 50 lakh that comes through the research institutions, which thankfully the government programs do support that very well. And then they kind of hit a wall because when they go talk to investors, they say, interesting, build some traction, let's talk, right? Now, build some traction depends on that stronger market connect.
Chicken and egg problem.
It's a chicken and egg problem. So this question for both of you, Ajit sir and MS sir, how do we accelerate that process? Today, we let them discover, they have to struggle their way, right? Struggle through their way and discover a market, kind of product market fit, validate it before they can raise even 1-2 crores. What can be done to, I know we've been talking about it, or Mission 10X was an attempt at that, but we couldn't find the right startups. What should be done and who should do it to accelerate the process? Ajit sir first and maybe MS sir after that.
So, basically, as you rightly said, there are 4 or 5 different capabilities that are required. And especially in, where it's entirely digital, we seem to be all right, broadly. But the moment it becomes anything physical, then you have, first of all, the digital technology, then you have engineering, then you have marketing, distribution, maintenance, and all these kinds of things. And then if you're not just looking inside, then you need to have a global perspective of the market, right? So most of our startups, at the moment at least, seem to come either from science background or from IT background, and typically lack these perspectives. Right?
It's never complete.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are doing is that we are creating, together with IIT Hyderabad, Mohan Reddy has started the Science Center in this thing, and we are working with them to create a entrepreneurship awareness program for scientists. Okay, look, you can't just take an idea unless you first figure out what's the market, who's the competition. The one thing that scares me is everyone say, oh, there is no competition. I said, no, something must be happening, right? So I think that's one. But similarly, what's one big problem that I see in our countries? For about the last 5 years, the government funded incubators left, right, and center. Now suddenly we are asking, what is the return? How do they become self-sufficient? The moment we push them to self-sufficiency, they are going to forget the people at the idea stage and the TRL 1, 2, 3 stage. They'll say, forget it, there's no money in that. That is where they need all this understanding. So we are not providing, we as incubator ecosystem have failed to provide the startups with that first perspective. Look, get this right first before you get into building a product. And I don't know how we are going to solve this, because if the funding dries up, everyone will move toward the last end. And then, like it happens now, right? One startup succeeds, about 11 incubators claim parentage for it. So I think we need to find ways, and the government needs to find ways of funding. Academic institutions, and IITs are doing it, need to find ways of explaining that, look, all these things are involved in it. And finally, how many mentors can we find in the non-digital space? Digital space, we are all right. In the non-digital, how many, even there are mentors also themselves. I get a doctor, the doctor doesn't know the market. So I think we have some genuine problems. Honestly, I don't know. We are all trying to do some, okay, let's build this ecosystem, let's build that ecosystem. Do I know the whole thing? I don't think I do.
No, absolutely. Very, very hard space. There are interesting problems being solved. Like recently we came across a startup in one of our cohorts. All they're doing is like banks that are giving small loans, working capital loans. They put a camera in the factory and track that the outcome they want is happening. With the working capital to ship some number of pieces, they track, and because the bank cannot send somebody, since they can't send, they don't give the loan. They're saying that you can now give 5-10 lakh loan, we will track it for you and kind of do the basic AI analytics. So there are point problems being solved, but deeper problems nobody is venturing. Not many are venturing at least. And what is your reading, MSR? Your little...
So I think obviously there's no single silver bullet for solving any of this, but a few thoughts, right? So I think one is, many times when I meet a startup, my first instinct after I meet them is, listen, this guy seems to have built a solution in search of a problem, okay, as opposed to the other way around. So I think if there's one thing which I think an industry can play a big role, so we are now trying this with a few of our corporate engagements, where we are asking them to don't get into the technology part. Just tell us what is the business challenge you have, right? And you run an innovation challenge, okay? So that way at least you have some level of validation that the problem is real. And let's take an example. So we are working with 2 or 3 large automobile manufacturing companies, right? So if there is a problem you're solving for one of them, there is a high probability that the similar problem would exist with the other two, right? So obviously then referenceability, being able to go after those other 2 or 3 would become easy, right? So I think one role which corporates can play, I think, is to actually start throwing challenges out there, right? And run an innovation challenge and ask people. I don't see enough of that happening today, honestly. So that's one. And then obviously also one other angle which is not being leveraged today is CSR money, right, is fairly substantial. And there are of course a lot of corporates here. CSR, there's been an amendment in the CSR thing, which I don't think both corporates have understood, nor have incubators been able to leverage it. Some part of the 2%, right, can actually be plowed back into incubation, right? So as opposed to supporting many very, good causes like education, healthcare, and so on, some of it can also be used to spur innovation. Okay, that's one. And I think the last point I want to make is, I was reminded of, as Professor Ajit was speaking, I was reminded of a quote which I read in a book, Professor Bill Ole from MIT, right? And he had a single line equation for innovation. Okay, so innovation is equal to idea into commercialization.
Idea into?
Commercialization, right? So I think our biggest challenge is the commercialization part.
So, I mean, like, I used to work for Pramati. I moved to Hyderabad to join Pramati, which was like, till date, I don't think there's a startup in India that has attempted anything like that, as far as I know, right? Trying to build technology for the world was a huge success in terms of building awareness globally for what the company was doing. In the early days of Java, building an app store from here. Of course, commercially it was very hard, and for all countries, and it didn't succeed, the product, but it got noticed globally. Anybody in those days, server-side Java, would probably know of Pramati, globally. There are only 5-6 app store companies. All the other names were likes of IBM, Oracle, Sun and such. So Now this has to come from deep science, right? Like you said, it's a hammer trying to find nails. The hammer is the starting point. Deep science, deep tech research is the starting point. We have to find the right golden nail early on, because I see all of our startups that come through our product labs, which is all hard. Like these are the ones that could potentially be technology for the world if they could capture the right golden nail in the right time before they run out of their runway. Some of them already run out of the runway in that pursuit. So the translation centers, like, I mean, IIT has the iHub, IIIT has the iHub data, which is the DST's initiative. There are other initiatives. How do you help find that golden nail if you find a technology? Because it's unlikely that the technologists will go find that market use case, right? They will say, look, this is the science. Computational chemistry, Ajay sir was referring, very strong work happening in many of the convergence of computational chemistry and machine learning. Now it's still a hammer. The nail to that golden nail, how do we help find? Jay first, and then maybe you have something to say, sir, before Jay.
You know, the reason I'm laughing is there's a challenge, okay? Practical challenge. We tried that in the pharma sector. The pharma sector, quite understandably, does not want to publicly disclose their problem.
So the golden nail is not even visible.
It's not visible. So what do? So we did two things recently which worked, and I don't know how to scale the model. I've been thinking. We did one conference with AIG, and the doctors poured out their problems. I mean, it was the most productive meeting I've done in the last 5 years. The doctors thought, this is my problem, you know, I have to put this damn thing under, and this is what it happens. The engineers were just drooling over it. Wow, this is what I get. Wow, this is. So I think we need to find those people who are willing to talk. The second model we did was IIT Bombay, the director, and they're doing some really outstanding work, and they also have got a lot of alumni money, so they're keen to do a lot of things. We brought a few industries and did a round table with them, where IIT people spoke of water. Now each one of those industries has privately contacted them to say, okay, now let's figure out mine. So we need to find those kind of mechanisms to bring out some, and we won't succeed uniformly, but somewhere or the other we'll succeed.
So the discovery and connections is key, even if it's not publicly.
Ramesh, I just want to add one point to which, maybe some of the business leaders here run large companies, and one of the things for a startup, also from a validation standpoint, is also, for example, I'm sure there are a lot of GCCs here, for example, who are part of the audience. So is to see if some of these startups, right, get in front of these people, right, and are given an opportunity to engage with them, to explore, in some cases, maybe sell to or sell through kind of opportunities. I don't think enough of that is happening today.
No, definitely. But just back to, I mean, Jay, first, I know you're still relatively kind of just still figuring things out there, but what you've seen in the last 6 weeks, how do you help connect, right?
Putting me on a spot.
What are the ways? I know, like Ajit sir rightly said, and Ajit sir has been doing this with lot of heart and passion for the last 7-8 years now, with very deep connections, right? I mean, like if on the research side and on the industry side and in the whole innovation process, I still say like the small team that Ajit sir put together first, it was a kick-ass team that could connect the dots. It's a very important thing, right? It's now, what is your experience, Jay? What are you seeing? What should academics do in terms of helping find those golden nails for the different research works with market possibilities?
I wish it was that easy.
Which is true. I mean, to the institutions, Ajit sir is saying that the fact that you and I are in IIIT is itself a starting point. It needs people like us. But that's a starting point. But still, this is something like even in our past lives we would not have done. We don't deal with frontline research, right? For us, we're dealing with CTO officers that's already connected to our markets, right? We're not dealing with frontline research which has no agenda. Right? And that research we have to connect with market possibilities. What are you, at least even if you're seeing challenges, what are the challenges you're seeing? Okay, we don't have the answers yet, but what are the challenges you're seeing?
The biggest challenge is like working on something for which a market or a commercial market does not exist. We think a market exists, but it actually doesn't. Number one, and to identify and define that market is not easy. So that I think is a lot to do with it, right? That what is it that what somebody is looking for? Could be a bank, could be a hospital, could be the man on the road. But what is it that they're really feeling short of, right? What is it that kind of nail that down through reaching out, by talking to people. Like I go back to my PhD day. When I had to decide my PhD problem, I did not sit in my lab and define the problem. I went and spoke to about 10 to 15 different professors across the United States to understand where the gap is. And I was working on a problem and an area. But what specifically is the need is something I could not decide by myself. So I think a similar approach has to be taken by, by the startup or whosoever is defining the problem to kind of decide that.
I'll give you a quick solution. The world needs many more people like you. You know, I'm not being facetious. What happens is you need a person working with scientists and researchers who can say, you know what, this can be of use there. Because the scientist and researcher doesn't think that way. Somebody who really understands the industry and is willing to spend time working or sitting with these people, that category of people is really missing in India today.
Right.
No, absolutely, sir. I think that is definitely required. So Surya, I mean, in your role, of course, you're a faculty. You've been there for almost from the early years of IIT Hyderabad. And now in your current role, you're looking at it up close, right, in terms of innovation and what are some of the things that IIT is trying? Because IIT has got very good success. I mean, sir referred to non-digital. I think IIT Hyderabad has got some very good solutions coming out of electrical engineering and few other. So what are things that you are trying at IIT in terms of getting that kind of an understanding, like Jay said, one is a concept sale. Sometimes that industry doesn't even know that some of the problems could be solved by these technologies. So there's a much harder scenario. But short of that, what are the things that being tried in IIT Hyderabad to identify those problems that research can solve?
One thing, if I answer the solution in a simple terms, interaction. That's the straightforward, simple answer, but different means of it. Okay, so the whole idea has been to find more and more reasons, more and more occasions for making faculty and industry interact. In different forms. So, but one of the big successes has been, for example, our data science program only for industry people in the evening. So that's an online program we run only for industry in the evening beyond the class hours, etc. Of course, the original intention was that we'll make it easy, we'll make it available beyond the campus, etc. But it was a lot of learning experience for our faculty also. The nature of questions and the nature of priorities are very different when an industry person is interacting and sitting on the other side than a student does. A student is only, for example, interested in the solution and the accuracy of the solution. Typically the MTech students we deal with. But when you have an industry person sitting there, the first question is, okay, fine, you have a beautiful algorithm. Tell me where is it useful? Tell me where it is applicable. Or maybe, look, I am doing this, do you think it is applicable? So I think that interaction between faculty and industry, and so the whole, maybe some like classes, some like online, some like different sessions like this. But I believe the secret would be more and more occasions for industry and
so the interaction is the key. There should be more interaction that happens. No, absolutely. And like in Tripleti's case, there are at least 4 or 5 of us, like me and Jay, which the institute had little bit flexibility to do such things. So that's helping bring some of it
and
within the institute.
I will add there. So we don't just encourage interactions, but also sometimes incentives and nudge or artist also. So usually, right. I think that TRL level and impact assessment, etc., has become a part and parcel of every project, every research, every thesis, by and large, you see today.
I use this a lot with Tripleti faculty. Jay, before you add your comment, I use a lot with Tripleti faculty. I tell them, look, you know what, please, for my sake, assume it's 2 hours waste of your time. Please come sit in this discussion. And like I tell them, like, don't expect anything. Because they say, no, what is it, why? I say, just come, you come, I'll be there. You just come, and half the time something useful comes out of it that they are excited about. You're right, you have to nudge, arm twist, do whatever to get them to these conversations, and then hopefully some magic will happen. Jay?
Yeah, just one very small thing. See, the word that I hear a lot when I talk to any of these technical, stars is technical complexity of the solution.
Complexity.
And that's what excites people. TRL, everything is based on that. But what about business complexity? Right? I mean, that paradigm I feel a lot missing, and that's a mindset which I'm already trying to bring in. Like for one of the mobility solutions we're working on, we're actually doing a product research into the market and trying to see what else is out there before we say that our product is so awesome or whatever we are building in the lab in IIIT is great. I'm sure there are other things out there to that which are probably better. So what can we think about? And we can really do a good criticism and evaluation of our own things from an addressable market perspective again. When you go and look at the other solutions that exist around us, from a business perspective also in addition to technology.
I'm so excited to hear such language happening inside the compounds of IIIT.
Yeah.
Business complexity. I think we just need more and more of it. So we've already run out of time, and I think the next finale is just about to get started. So I want one exciting technology and or startup that each of you have come across in recent times that you're excited about. We'll start with you, Jay.
Not in the last 6 weeks, I would say, but I have a very close friend of mine who has set up his own startup. It's called Drishti. It is based out of the Bay Area, and they have an office in Bangalore. My close friend is the CTO of that company. So, so what they do is something related to applied AI research. So I do not know the details of what exactly they do because of various IP reasons, but there's something to do with the pipeline, the mechanical engineer working, and the Drishti in kind of measuring the productivity and trying to suggest something around it. So that I find is pretty exciting because it is improving the productivity.
I think increasingly you're coming across more and more such startups which are solving very specific problems, and they are definitely more, yeah. Surya, any technology that excites you?
One example I would like to give is one startup on, so usually AI is always identified with the blue collared context, okay. So there is one startup which is doing the highest jump equivalent to bungee jump, and they are wanting to set up a facility in Himachal Pradesh to do that. And they're using AI techniques for the safety and risk assessment and how to make it faster and how to make it safer. So I think so this is why I like it is mostly in the safety industrial context, etc., where it's not necessarily, as I said, a IT or a blue collar, but even tangible industry, sweat industry also can use it. Where you kind of, actually a lot of hard work is involved, that also is important.
Absolutely, yeah. MS sir, you see a lot. It must be a harder problem for you to pick one, but something that excited you a lot.
There's one startup I know and you know well, which I like. Okay, it's trying to build a private GPT for enterprises. It's run by a young guy called Vishnu Ramesh. Okay, so I like that startup.
One of our research startups.
Yeah.
The professor is a co-founder.
Yeah. Then another one which I like is a startup called Aganita, which is about accelerating biopharma R&D. 3 very, very seasoned founders. 2 have come back actually from Boston. We have a bunch of interesting startups in the HR space. So how do you one of course is in around gamification of learning and so on. But there are 1 or 2 which are doing some really interesting work in the area of, so I'll give you an example, right? So we were hiring somebody and so first get a job JD done, okay, which they did. Then send it out. So we got 176 CVs. We defined the attributes, what we were looking for in that role, and it gave us a short list of 10, right? Then we used another of our startups to do a video interview, using a video chat bot with those 8, and only the final 4 were actually met. Right? So it's real and it's happening.
It is very real and today.
It's happening. Yeah. We have some interesting startups in, I'll take a name. So we have a very interesting startup in the logistics and maritime. This is a startup called Ad.ai. Right? So I think they will become big.
Interesting. Sir, your excitement?
I think in the very near future, the most exciting use of AI is going to be in repurposing existing drugs to really solve big new problems. So the great thing about it is the drugs exist, we know how to manufacture them, we know how safe they are, we know how to distribute them. Now all of a sudden you found much better of totally divergent views. I think that is going to be the most...
Sir? I mean, you come across recently in the news few cases where a drug that's been around for some time, they found to solve something else which is very hard to solve. Why is it so hard to discover this connection?
Again, two, three things. One is that the people who discovered it were focused on that, right? Second thing is, when you see this pathway, you simply do not. What AI has done is shown you a pathway which you conceptually did not know existed or did not think to. Maybe you thought they were too. See, we all go for the most likely, right? When we do research or when we repurpose, we say, what are the nearest one? What are the. This has suddenly come out of the blue somewhere totally different. And I think that is what, to me, is really exciting, because that's going to be fast, cost effective, and of huge benefit to humanity.
I think that's a lost opportunity if you don't discover those possibilities. I came across in Agastya Foundation, which is an NGO in Bangalore working with government schools for teaching science. At an AI conference there a few weeks back, I discovered this thing called TeachFX. And it's a US startup, and now I like it so much, it's getting built right now and ready for social purposes. It says it's a speaker sitting in the class. At the end of the class, gives all kinds of insights to the teacher, including like amount of time teacher spoke, amount of interaction in the class, the word cloud of what was taught, is it connected with the topic of the day, and a lot of other insights which helps the teacher teach better. Assess how the class went. It's almost like a survey without a survey, automatically generating. We've built something to teach English in government schools. We've taken that and now building this analytics, and we're going to pilot in some government schools. So I think a lot of possibilities. I think AI is here to stay. Gen AI will vanish. ChatGPT will vanish, right? Because already, like anybody that gets excited, I question them, tell me 6-9 months, one useful problem ChatGPT has solved, and they can't. So I think it'll die, but GPT has value, their models have value, and I think AI solutions are here, will solve point problems, right? I think, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of it through the year with the hype kind of dying. And so thank you so much, Sajid sir, MSR, Surya, and Jay, and glad to have Jay surface. So we'll see more of Jay representing the translation world. And Surya, in your new role, I think it's very important that institutions like IITs have this role, Dean of Innovation and Translation. So thank you so much. Thanks for the time, and thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.